Today, more than 175,000 Americans have died from a deadly virus Donald Trump ignored, praising China's response instead of heeding the warnings, then blaming them to cover his own failures. With the economy in shambles, more than 30 million Americans are out of work, the worst economy in decades. This afternoon, millions of Americans will apply for unemployment, and with their savings run out, many are giving up hope. Millions worry that a loved one won't survive COVID-19. There's mourning in America, and under the leadership of Donald Trump, our country is weaker and sicker and poorer. And now, Americans are asking, if we have another 4 years like this, will there even be an America?
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Call in or text live 414-395-0484. Thought-provoking talk radio covering all topics from local to national and everything in between. It may not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. That's The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Podcasts available on our website, theforum2.com. Check us out. Good morning. Welcome to the program. Today is Wednesday, August 26th, 2020. So a lot took place overnight, and we are going to cover it. We're going to have a discussion about it, and then I also would really appreciate if more people would heed the warnings. This is no longer about an officer-involved shooting. It is no longer about Jacob Blake. It is not. The theme of what is happening from this point forward, because last night everything changed. And typically, the understanding would be African Americans are tired of mistreatment by the police and this consistent use of excessive force that can turn what should be a routine arrest or a routine traffic stop into a murder, that is what people are rioting and looting for. And then interject all of the people talking about, well, Dr. King didn't do all of that, and you guys should be protesting peacefully, and then that conversation goes off in its own direction. And then people begin to argue and disagree. And then you have to interject history into it and all these really complicated things that nobody seems to have time for. That is not what this is. This is the winter of America's discontent. This is people that are fed up with the pandemic, fed up with the lack of a response to it, fed up because they are out of money. They have not yet gotten their unemployment, which they have been applying for since March in the state of Wisconsin. They're getting evicted. They don't know if they can send their kids back to school. People are not equipped to homeschool their children for an entire school year. Those are some of the people that are in the streets. What some of them are doing. Now, there are some people that are out there for a just and righteous cause, but they have been overshadowed. I want to make that perfectly clear. The people that are protesting for righteousness and for justice and for fairness and equality are getting overshadowed. It is everybody who has a grievance about anything nowadays is out there in the streets. And what I noticed as I was watching hours and hours and hours of live footage from Kenosha, several different angles, including a correspondent who's from Milwaukee that I know. And I told us not to go down there. If you're from Milwaukee, do not go to Kenosha. I know you want to help. Don't help. Because now if you go, you might get murdered. It's a very unceremonious way to die. Because you want to capture the story or you want to get some video and now your family can't afford to bury you. Do not go down to Kenosha. The Kenosha County Board is asking for 1,500 additional National Guard troops with police power. That particular caveat, with police power, which means they can shoot you. Don't go. This is not just about protesting police brutality. It's anybody and everybody that has an issue, that has a grievance, that is upset. And then you have the other side, because of course there's good people on both sides, right? People that are traveling from all over the state of Wisconsin and now all over the Midwest. There were a number of people that were interviewed last night that saw some of the action on some of the live Facebook videos of what was happening in Kenosha and drove from North Dakota, drove up from Illinois, driving down from Green Bay, because they want to be a patriot and they want to protect people's property. You know, in the state of Wisconsin, you cannot use deadly force to protect property. You cannot. If you shoot somebody and you kill them in the act of defending property, especially property that's not your own, that's murder. We haven't verified his age, but the consistent information is showing this is a 17-year-old kid that killed at least one. He may be responsible for both of the deaths. And then also they say a third person was shot and injured. I received a photo of that person's injury, the third person that took gunfire last night or early this morning in Kenosha. You know, sometimes when you hear that an individual is injured, it could be anything as, you know, small as them tripping and breaking their ankle. Or maybe they broke a finger or something small and benign like that. This injury, and some of you have seen it. I'm not going to post it, and do not post it because we will not approve it in the group. So you know your bicep muscle here on the top of your arm? This man, and we don't know who he is, but he's actually he's got a pistol in his hand. Okay, so he has a firearm in his hand. And there's live cameras that are running up to him because he is screaming at the top of his lungs for a medic, and nobody is coming to his aid. The entire top portion of his bicep it's gone. You see the muscle fibers and the veins and the sinew of his arm that was blown away by a high-powered assault rifle. And it very well could have been the individual whose name still has to be verified. A 17-year-old kid from Illinois, an outside agitator, killed 2 people, allegedly, and injured a third. Now, the other thing that I think it is necessary for us to discuss, these are not black people. They're not. Now, there's black people there because there's black people who are out there for the righteous cause. And maybe there are some black people that are out there that are there for less than a righteous cause, but there's also a black community in Kenosha. So, yes, some of the individuals are African American that were out in the streets past curfew. No doubt about that. But if you look at the people that are causing the destruction, the people that have their hammers and their bats that are just breaking windows, they're just in the parking lot, just breaking windows, and the people that are engaging in gunfire, none of them are black. Well, your president said when the looting starts, the shooting starts. They're just following his orders. Does anybody find it even the least bit ironic that the whole Trump campaign is talking about how America will descend into chaos under Joe Biden's watch? America is in chaos, and quite honestly on the verge of somewhere between a revolutionary war and a civil war, or a hybrid of both, under Donald Trump's watch. This is Trump's America. This is what he wanted. More importantly, this is what Russia wanted, and they got it. They got it. They're brilliant. They're brilliant. They screwed Americans over with other Americans. Unbelievable. Finally, our chickens are coming home to roost. I made a post yesterday because I saw the very emotional press conference from the Blake family. And after I saw the emotion that was very well articulated by Jacob Blake's mother, I said, well, tonight is going to go one of two ways. There's not going to be any middle ground. Tonight is either going to be People are going to put their grievances about the economy aside, put their grievances about the coronavirus aside, and come together peacefully and begin to rebuild community and start talking about and working on solutions. It was going to go that way, or it was going to be deadly, and it was. Now his word is out, and there's blood in the water, because there are people that just want to sow chaos and discord. Their ears have now perked up, and they're on their way. They're traveling. The curfew in Kenosha has been lifted, and there will be more of this tonight, because now the stakes have been elevated, because there have been a number of people, and we ignored them as crazy kooks that have been in these little militias for years and years and years because they knew it. It goes back to even Timothy McVeigh in the 1990s. These extremists that have been waiting for this day, and now they have it. And lo and behold, it's in Wisconsin. It's, of all places, right? It's here. Some of the most disturbing unrest that we have seen this summer has taken place in the Midwest. Minneapolis, Kenosha. Protests that we saw here in the city of Milwaukee. Does anybody find it the least bit ironic or disturbing that the second night of the Republican convention, whoever put it on, the Trump campaign, Satan himself, whoever's a producer of the Republican convention, featured the McCloskey couple, the white folks in St. Louis that pulled their firearms out on peaceful protesters walking down the street. They were speakers at the Republican convention on night 2. On the same night, a member of Frank Nitti and Tory Lowe's caravan was shot at for doing the exact same thing. Is it disturbing or ironic to anybody that when Donald Trump says when the looting starts, the shooting starts? And that's what we saw last night, people coming from elsewhere, coming from Illinois of all places, to defend property in which they have no allegiance to. Look, you want to defend your property? By all means. But defend your own property at your house. Don't come here. We haven't sent a strong enough warning to these outsiders, because what's going to happen is Wisconsin's going to get blamed. Like when Seville Smith was murdered, you know who took the blame for that? The Sherman Park neighborhood and the people in the neighborhood. It's never the people in the neighborhood. It's always somebody else. It's never the people in the neighborhood. It's never the homeowners, ever. It's somebody else that descends to our area, commit heinous crimes, they leave, and then we get the blame. I'm beyond frustrated, because I know that it can get a lot worse. And in the worst that it can get, I don't want it to be here. In 2017, January 20th to be exact, there was rioting and looting in Washington, D.C. Do you guys remember that? I mean, the story has since been dramatically overshadowed, because that seemed like an eternity ago. Jeff Sessions was the newly appointed Attorney General at the time, and his first order of business was to charge over 200 protesters in the Washington, D.C. area with federal crimes because they rioted and they looted. I mean, they broke like the window of a Starbucks in downtown D.C. But do you remember what that was in a response to? That was in a response to just Donald Trump getting inaugurated. Trump hadn't done anything yet. At that point, Trump had only said things on the campaign trail. There were people that tore up Washington, D.C. just because the man got inaugurated. Now, I want you to fast forward 4 years and look at the path, the wake of destruction that his policies and those that support him are still clinging to. Look where we are as a nation. And then can you imagine what happens? Because blood has been drawn. Ignore it if you want to. And I posted a picture of this child that allegedly, got to say allegedly, murdered 2 people and shot a third, like blew the arm off of his arm is missing. His arm is going to get amputated. Jacob Blake is never going to walk again, and somebody who was out there last night who probably should have been at home is going to lose their arm, and we're just getting started. We're just getting started. Good morning, Kathy. Chandra Wallace, good morning to you. Leah Delaney, good morning. Vanessa Garrett, good morning. Queen Talita Robinson, good morning to you. Tamisha Caldwell, good morning. Thank you guys for joining us. Eileen Seeger says, my heart is heavy. The events of the last 3 days have been difficult to witness and process. It's gonna get worse. If they looted and rioted just because Donald Trump got inaugurated, and then we've seen what 4 years of his policies have done to this nation, I think there's the political damage that's done, the policy damage that's done to the nation, but then there's the social damage. The social fabric of America is ripped to shreds. I have no tolerance for anybody that says they're still undecided in this election. You are voting for some semblance of stability, or you are voting for war. Don't be nice to your little Trump sympathizing friends or people that think Joe Biden is this or thinking it's that. These people are disguising the fact that they are turned on and excited by this kind of violence. The people that were upset when Trump got inaugurated, that tore up Washington, D.C. in 2017, will undoubtedly arm themselves at his next inauguration in 2021. You can call me crazy if you want to, because the stakes have been elevated. 1,500 additional National Guard troops. Let me go to the Kenosha News so I can give it straight to you guys. From the Kenosha News, Kenosha County Board Chairman John O'Day and Vice Chairwoman Monica Uhas have sent a letter to Governor Tony Evers on behalf of the whole county board requesting that additional National Guard members with police powers be sent to Kenosha County immediately. The letter reads, and I quote, "We, the undersigned, are urgently asking you for swift action to activate more National Guard troops with police powers to be sent to Kenosha County. Our county is under attack. Our businesses are under attack. Our homes are under attack. Our local law enforcement agencies need additional support to help bring civility back to our community. We are formally asking for 1,500 National Guard members with police powers to be sent to Kenosha County immediately. Our county is in a state of emergency, and we need additional law enforcement to help preserve and save Kenosha County. We encourage you to visit Kenosha County and see firsthand the destruction that has been inflicted on our community." There was something like 40 different fires, structure fires that were burning at the same time on Monday. This very well could get worse. And when I say get worse, it won't be the people who call Kenosha home. It will be other people from all over the country that have been enticed, that have been incited, that have been turned on by the rhetoric in this nation, because this is where they see the war zone. Because this 17-year-old kid, let's be honest, I don't think he's going to get charged. He's all over all of these different video feeds. Like, he's in front of so many cameras. There's even a live video shot of him after he's shot he's dead, right? He's laying on the ground, and they have a bunch of T-shirts that people took off of their bodies to try and seal the wound to his head, and he's obviously lifeless. And the 17-year-old kid with his shoulder-slung AR-15 rifle is on his cell phone. And the first part of the conversation that's recorded is inaudible, because there's a lot of background noise and there's a lot of screaming, of course. And it's, what do I do now? What happens now? What do I do now? I just killed someone. So he just admitted to killing someone, and then he goes out of the frame of the camera. As a man is laying, a young man, probably in his 20s, lifeless on the ground of a of a parking lot. So this is where we are. And I don't even know if we can sit here and say, oh, we can just talk it out and work it out and we can figure out some solutions. Didn't we try that? Haven't we tried? Didn't we try to put a bunch of democratically passed bills through the democratically controlled House in which people in this country went out and voted in a midterm election in 2018, voted like a presidential election for these midterms? Wasn't that our opportunity to try and work it out? The country was like, okay, we've seen 2 years of Donald Trump. He won the election in 2016. He was sworn in January 20th, 2017. The next time people could go out and vote was November of 2018. And the people in this country said, oh, we're just going to go a different direction legislatively because we already don't like what Trump's first 2 years have done. And so that was the time to work it out and to talk it out. Nothing got passed. In fact, they can't even agree. When I say they, it's the Republicans, can't even agree on giving people a second stimulus check when some people haven't gotten their unemployment, some people haven't gotten their first stimulus check, some people are getting evicted. They can't agree on giving the American people a second measly $1,200 because Donald Trump wants the post office defunded. This is what a despotic, fascist regime looks like. You don't have to read history books anymore. You can start to piece things together if you want to get a sense of where we're going. Look at 1938, 1939 Europe. That's just about where we are. Here's the difference. When we saw this, what's happening in this country right now, America that you love very much, when we saw this happening somewhere else, what do we do as a nation? We're like, we have our own problems. We're very isolationist at the time. We didn't want to get involved in Europe's war. Europe is having some problems. And then the Japanese, who allied themselves with the Italians and the Germans, struck America, and we had to get in the fight. We then took the political and social sentiments that were happening in Europe, and we took that to war. We went to stop that kind of fascism, that kind of tyranny, that threat to freedom and democracy over there. We went, sent our military, and we stopped it. And America was very handsomely rewarded because after that, we enjoyed this thing called superpower status. Here's the difference. It is happening here to us in our nation. When it happens somewhere else, we go get those people. Sometimes we use diplomacy. Sometimes we use sanctions. Sometimes we send troops. Sometimes we go to war, overt or covert war. When what is happening in this country happens somewhere else, we extinguish that because we see it as a threat to our way of life. Because if the bad guys win a battle or they take over a country or they annex a part of Ukraine, America sees that as a threat to her interest. Here's the difference. Now, what used to happen over there is now happening over here, but nobody is coming to help us. I want you guys to know that. No other country is going to intervene in what is happening in this nation. They're going to let us burn. And part of the reason why Donald Trump severed so many relationships with our allies or strained those relationships so that they would write America off and they would not be our allies. They would not help us. They would not intervene. They would not give their sentiments and thoughts and prayers to the American people that are suffering. The entire world is saying F you to us. And I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth it. Those of you that didn't like Hillary Clinton, or those of you that wanted something different. Oh, those of you that wanted a businessman. Those of you that want something in the economy. This is what you got. Does it feel good? Because, I mean, I don't know if it... Good morning, Mary Braun. L.A. Thomas, good morning. Cool Papa Jack, good morning to you too. Star Xavier Mom, good morning, everyone, she says. Solomon Johnson, good morning. Udell Harris, good morning, my brother. Craig Peterson, good morning. Anthony Dodd, good morning. He says truth. Diane Thomas, good morning to you as well. Orvana Harris, good morning. Francine Hale, good morning to you as well. Mr. Michael May, I'm in complete disgust. The number of people I saw blaming protesters when they heard reports of shootings overnight in Kenosha. Quote, shootings, we need militia. If you woke up this morning, saw the reports, and assumed without any second thought that it was black protesters who did the firing, you have a racist mindset. Do better. You know what else was just amazing to me? Because even when black people try to do the right thing, we get blamed. Because you can tell and you can hear the anxiety of the crowd. And so the evening started out with a line of protesters. There's a park, there's a street, then there's the Kenosha County Courthouse. The Kenosha County Courthouse is under a barricade. It's barricaded off. You can't get to the Kenosha County Courthouse. And there's a fence line. You got a park, you got a street, you got a fence line, and you have police officers, sheriff's deputies behind the fence line, and then you have military vehicles that are flanking this fence line, protecting government buildings. Not protecting people's private property, but first protecting government buildings. And anyone who even approaches that fence line got hit with a rubber bullet or they deployed tear gas. That's where the evening started. Let me tell you about good police work. You know, I would argue this even though I'm not a lawyer. So curfews are unconstitutional. You can technically say, I want you home at 8 o'clock because you might do something naughty after 8 o'clock. But if you have a First Amendment right to peacefully assemble and to protest your government, the government can't tell you the hours of operation of your constitutional rights. So you can't say everybody be home at 8 o'clock because something curfew. Now, governments do it and they have a very like a narrow, exercise of a curfew, but on their face, they are unconstitutional. The government can't tell you how individuals can exercise the rights that are granted and bestowed to all of us. They cannot do that. That in and of itself, the thought of a curfew, the thought of the government imposing rules on the constitutional rights that people have is just ultra illegal. And so people didn't go home at 8 o'clock. And so what happens is you got the courthouse that's walled off, and they could have just left it. Because nobody was going to get to the courthouse. And of course, that was something that needed to be protected because something, that's where Kenosha justice is, or that's where justice lives in Kenosha. So they had it walled off. They had the military vehicles flanking this fence line, and the courthouse was very well protected. And every so often, the cops would fire. Boom, 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 boom. They'd fire some tear gas. The tear gas canister would get thrown right back over. There's something about those Kenosha people. They're like a hybrid between Milwaukee and Chicago. They're very serious. But then the police officers and the military vehicles came from the other side of the fence line to where the people were. Remember, you got courthouse, you got fence line, you got street, you got a park. The police line then came to the other side of the fence line along with the military vehicles. And they said, we're closing the park. Y'all got to leave. Y'all got to go home. People were not going home. And law enforcement telling people to go home means people are just going to stay. And so what they did when they tried to close the park, and there's people that are trying to stand in front of the military vehicles, and they got big metal dumpsters and put them in front of the military vehicles. Part of it was to shield themselves from the incoming tear gas canisters. And the military vehicles just continued to push forward through the park. They did clear the park. So they moved from protecting the courthouse behind that fence line and with a line of shoulder-to-shoulder law enforcement officers. I believe it said sheriffs on their riot shields. So they protected the courthouse. But then when the law enforcement, moved into the park and they pushed people out of the park, all they did were push people into the city and into the neighborhoods. Remember, a curfew was unconstitutional and these people were not going home. This is where the people that have legitimate grievances, that want to protest, because you can stand in a park if you are out there protesting the atrocities committed by law enforcement and by your government. That is a protected right. And those people that, call themselves patriots and they hate these rioters and they hate these looters are not standing up for people's protected rights of free speech. The cops came like a Gestapo, pushed people out of the park because we got to close the park. People can assemble in the park all night long. I think those cops just got bored. And they knew that when they pushed people out of that park into the city, and there's so much evidence of this. There are police officers, I don't know if they were National Guard or what kind of officers they were specifically, but I'm sure all of that is going to come out. First of all, local news is garbage. Local news is like 12 hours behind what's actually happening, so very disappointed. Had to send a couple of tweets this morning because these local newscasters are just lost, or their producers are lost. And so there were some conversations that were also recorded between law enforcement and some of the militia folks that are out there on the ground. Like talking to the camera. And the law enforcement, and one of them, the shooter, the 17-year-old kid, allegedly asked for a couple bottles of water because he was thirsty. So this is before he committed a murder. He asked one of the individuals who was commandeering the armored military-style vehicle, and they threw it out there. Oh, here, we can give you a couple bottles, but that's all we can spare. He was like, thank you. He's got an AR-15 slung around his chest, and he's getting water from it might have been the National Guard. So they're giving him water. So they're cooperating with him. But then you see this other conversation that's recorded. And there's so much stuff that's been posted. I don't know where it is. I'll find it if it hasn't been posted already. One of the militia members said, well, I just had a conversation with law enforcement. And the militia member said, you don't have no reason to think this guy's lying. He's wearing a tactical vest and he's got his assault weapon. And he said, yeah, so what we're going to do, this is the law enforcement agent that's talking, says we're going to push them out toward you, toward the militias. And then the law enforcement officer says, well, because you guys can handle them better than us. It's all caught on video. We're going to push them. We're going to push them out of the park. We're going to push them toward you. So this was a part of a strategy. Because you guys can handle them better than us. And then within an hour, 2 people are dead. Another person has his arm blown off. Marlon Pitchford says, good morning to you, Marlon. What up, people? He's on his way to D.C. You be careful out there, Marlon. I'd imagine you're going to show your support for the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. That's going to turn violent, too. The days of Dr. King don't exist anymore. I think the requirement of the movement at the time was to remain peaceful, to show the violence of the oppressors, to show the violence of the racists. Because if you just remain peaceful and you just had a peaceful march down to the courthouse, or just had a peaceful march in 1964 or 1965, or a peaceful march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, you were encouraged not to fight back, to love your oppressor, because cameras would show up and newscasters would show up, and they would only show the white bigots being violent, and that was fuel for the movement. It was the violence of the oppression, because Jim Crow laws in and of themselves are violence. The way they are enforced is violent, and so if you have people that just want to participate in society, like just go to the library, just drink out of a normal drinking fountain, use a normal bathroom, when you try to be a part of society, in which, here's the thing, in which black people paid the same amount of money in taxes as white people did, but why did black people during the Jim Crow South have to get less accommodations? If I pay the same bus fare as you, why do I have to sit in the back? And if there's no seats available in the back, I have to stand. Or if a white person wants my seat legally, I have to get up. People didn't understand the implications and the impact of that. Like, I pay the same fare. If you're going to require me to stand or require me to get up when a white person wants to sit down, then don't charge me a bus fare, because my accommodations are not equal, but the amount of money that I'm paying is equal. And so that movement was based on peace to show the violence of the oppressor. And as time has gone on, people internalized the peaceful protest not to show the violence of the oppressor, but because a peaceful protest doesn't upset anybody, because it's polite. But the violence of segregation and of sundown towns which have mysteriously made a comeback, the violence of that still exists, but people that want to push back against that are told to remain peaceful. They're telling people to remain peaceful so you can get ignored. But whenever the same amount of violence is used against the oppression and against the sundown towns and against the racists and the bigots and the malicious, then it's only a problem then. But white folks can tear up whatever they want. In fact, you can take a scene from any day of unrest between May 25th and last night in Kenosha. Just take some pictures. Take some pictures of some vandalism. Take some pictures of some buildings that have their windows broken out, some stores that were looted, real terrible things. Cars that were vandalized. Okay, take any one picture of that. You know what it looks like? It looks like Ohio State winning a national championship. It's those fundamental differences that because white supremacy is so the rule of the day, that it's different when a bunch of drunk college kids, why are you destroying your own campus? Why would you kids destroy your own town? This is your college town. You know how stupid you sound when you say that? Them kids that destroy their campuses when their team wins a national championship don't own any more of that college town than people that live in Kenosha or Milwaukee or Minneapolis or anywhere else. Oh, those kids are just celebrating. I remember, where was I in Madison? What? Madison has had their fair share of destruction on State Street because the Badgers won. And when you think about that, that is empty. Like, that is an empty use of violence and rioting because their team won. But when people were doing that exact same thing for the righteous cause, and I posted a link yesterday that showed that this country, this republic, was created with looting and with violence. The early militias, the Sons of Liberty they were called, they destroyed all sorts of British property to prove their point. Because that is how serious oppression is, and because black people often suffer in silence, then the attention on the violence of the oppression itself doesn't seem to exist. Telling someone what they can't do at the same time everybody else can do it in a free society, in a free country, and then people can come here from other nations. If you immigrate from Eastern Europe or Western Europe, you come to America, white supremacy. You have it. You own it immediately. Don't even speak the language yet, but because of your color of your skin, you are already bestowed a certain number of rights, privileges, and freedoms that you did not earn. And I don't have an issue with immigrants. But part of the assimilation process, especially for immigrants that come from Eastern and Western European countries, is, well, to fit in America, I guess I'll be racist because I'm trying to assimilate. I'm trying to be a regular American. And so that actually becomes a part of the culture. People, even if they know better, even if their ethnicity was ostracized and oppressed where they're from, they can come to America. They won't get ostracized and oppressed like they did in their home country. They can come here and get a job. They can come here and practice whatever religion they want. But what they then get to do to assimilate to other Americans and to blend into American culture is they can start hating black people. And that is the part that we're sick of. Carissa Givens says to help the white supremacy militia. If you're referring to, because if you go to Reddit, Reddit, it's an app you can download. By all means, be cautious. Be careful with Reddit. There are a number of people that are making their plans and forming their caravans to come to Kenosha. You can just read it in real time. Yeah, we're on our way. We're coming from Green Bay. Oh, we're on our way. You want to meet up with us in Manitowoc? We're on our way. We're coming down from Sheboygan. And the biggest victims are not just our democracy and our republic, but the people that live in Kenosha that don't even want to deal with this because it's other people. I'm telling you guys, please don't go down there. Douglas Dickerson, good morning to you. Karen Ann, good morning. Carissa Givens, preserve their sundown town. So it used to be a real thing, and so Appleton, Wisconsin used to be a sundown town, so if you were black or brown, you had to be they gave you a curfew, which, again, unconstitutional. You had to be in the house by 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever. Forget the fact if you work a particular shift and you can't be home at 10 o'clock, then it was basically a free-for-all. So if you were caught on the streets after the sun went down in any of these towns in America, and a lot of them were in the north. You know George Wallace, when he ran for president, I think he ran for president a couple of times. When he ran in 1964, his campaign manager, he had a regional campaign manager. George Wallace, a notorious segregationist. Oh, I got a George Wallace clip in case I need to jog somebody's memory. But when he ran for president, I believe in 1964, he said outside of Alabama, okay, he could call the south side of Milwaukee his second home. This is 1960s, right? 1964, Alabama, George Wallace felt so comfortable on the south side of Milwaukee, he called it his second home. His campaign manager, regional manager, because Wisconsin was the state in which he was competing in the primary, was from Oshkosh, which is in the Fox Valley, which is adjacent to, 17 miles from Appleton, which was at the time a sundown town. So even though it seems like an era that's long gone, wasn't that long ago at all. And here we are. So I hope that it was worth it for those of you that voted for Donald Trump because, well.
In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny, and I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. Let us send this message back to Washington by our representatives who are here with us today, that from this day we are standing up, and the heel of tyranny does not fit the neck of an upright man, that we intend to take the offensive and carry our fight for freedom across this nation, wielding the balance of power we know we possess in the Southland, that we, not the insipid block voters of some sections, will determine in the next election who shall sit in the White House of these United States.
So Mary Braun asks, how is it possible he won't be charged? He feared for his life. It's the person that he shot. So I don't know the situation about the two individuals that lost their lives, and I don't know if it was that single alleged 17-year-old boy, again alleged, that murdered those two people, but we do know that he was the one responsible for shooting a man and blowing his bicep off of his arm. There's a hole in this guy's arm. Like a third of his bicep is totally gone. He did shoot him. And that individual who had their bicep blown off had a firearm in their hand. And so that looks to me, just based upon whatever scant evidence that is, that it's self-defense. If you shoot somebody that has a gun, and as I understand, either because real news, real on-the-ground reporting, and I'm going to encourage you guys to follow Mercado Media, MERCADO Media. Them guys don't miss a beat. They've got two different correspondents that are in different locations giving different views of what was happening on the ground. And so they've captured all of it. And a lot of the evidence from what happened last night is going to be their video footage. But if you shoot somebody that has a gun, and then so the 17-year-old kid allegedly is being chased. And then he either slips and falls or somebody tackles him. And then he just opens fire. And then, thankfully enough, people were able to run away quickly enough. But the people that were chasing this 17-year-old kid, allegedly, they were black. And they would have kicked his ass. But he started shooting. There's a picture of him because his social media is, I don't know if it's sealed now, but it was open and people could go to his page and get a bunch of screenshots, and there was a fair amount of doxing that took place on this 17-year-old kid. And there's a picture of him at a Santa Claus display, wearing his little, because he's like a junior cop cadet, like he wants to, like a little George Zimmerman, want to be a cop. And he's a kid, like this is several years ago, you can tell. He's got a baby face. He's got a baby face now. And he's standing in a Santa Claus display, wearing his little blue shirt, his black tie, and his police cadet uniform. And I posted that picture so people could see what a murderer, allegedly, looks like. Just a kid wearing a cop uniform, standing at a Christmas display at a Target store. And you know what the overwhelming response was to that picture of this kid that's a murderer, allegedly? Is laughter. That's why we're screwed, because there's no humor in that. This is a child. A child that has the ability to commit murder. Now, if there was school going on, this kid would be your candidate to be a school shooter. But there is no school, but there's ample opportunity because he is taking advantage of the unrest. And a lot of what we're seeing is, so when you hear the anxiety levels in the crowd rise, because you can hear the tension, and people are yelling more, and they're screaming more, and they're roaring, and they're cheering, you can hear it, and then you know something is about to happen. And then in those moments, because you hear the crescendo of the crowd, maybe there's somebody agitating them, maybe there's somebody egging them on, maybe those people are planted by the Trump administration. At this point, why wouldn't they? Because if you want to show a destroyed America and you can blame that on Joe Biden, then it's politically expedient for Donald Trump and his allies to make the violence worse. It is. And please don't think that there's a level of decency in him where he wouldn't do that. He's being advised on all of these things. Remember, Stephen Miller is still working for the White House. They're going to try and make this look like this is what happens in a Joe Biden socialist America, when it's really what's happening in a Donald Trump fascist America. But if a 17-year-old kid can possess the ability to murder people, then there are people that are much older, that are much wiser, that are much more experienced, that will also participate in these kinds of activities. There's nothing funny about it. This is also a part of the phenomenon of deaths of despair, because the crowd, and you can't see everybody in the crowd, of course, but you can even hear the chanting. These are white kids. And right before they break a window, or right before they break a storefront door, or right before they kick in a door, you hear them chant Black Lives Matter. It's almost like they're scapegoating Black Lives Matter, because they know, because that's white privilege too. If you just yell Black Lives Matter, then people will think that the movement itself of Black Lives Matter is what is causing the destruction. So even some of those people that are out there that you would think are protesting for justice, they're just using the movement to express their discontent with getting evicted, with not getting their checks, with being out of work. They're using the movement. They're preying on the movement so they can commit destruction. And these people, they have nothing to live for. They're suicidal. We had details of that prior to all of this happening. These deaths of despair, where white men, their life expectancy is shortening faster than any other demographic group in this country. It's heroin overdoses, it's alcoholism, and it's suicide. And now they're taking their suicide and their anger and their angst out into the streets, and some of them are on the malicious side, and some of them are on the Black Lives Matter side. But either way, it's the same thing. There are people that are literally suicidal, and they want to take the entire world with them because they feel this despair. And we're witnessing all of this in front of us, but then they're going to call it Black Lives Matter. And what are they going to say on the news? Black Lives Matter protesters and Antifa. They say we can name all the leftist anarchist groups, but we failed to mention the ones on the right. Carissa Givens, Illinois, come get your child. Well, if it was up to us, he'd stay here. Margaret Chavez Salud, I thought he was taking the money from Social Security. Oh, there's that. So I got to confirm this. But within, both of these things are going to happen within 6 months of Donald Trump's next term. So if he wins, which at this point I'm kind of resigning to the fact that Trump is some kind of way either going to get reelected outright or is going to throw the election into so much chaos, because if there's violence now leading up to the election, the anxiety is going to rise even more. And so people that are still in the house and still being good boys and girls and not out there participating are going to get more and more and more anxious as November comes. And all they need, all the Trump administration needs, is just to illustrate that, well, we got to send in more troops because look how these people are acting. We got to send more people to protect these polling places because of voter fraud, et cetera, et cetera. And so if Trump, if he wins, which he needs to, because if he gets inaugurated, several days after his inauguration, the statute of limitations runs out, so where he can no longer be charged with a variety of crimes that send his friends and colleagues to prison. So he needs to get reelected for that. That's why he's destroying the post office. Because if there's going to be a number of people that may potentially vote for him that will vote by mail, well, then just cut out the mail. Even though people are not getting their prescriptions, and you've got veterans who can't get their prescriptions from the VA because the mail service is all but stopped in some places. It is the only institution that will deliver to every address in the United States, from the Aleutian Islands in Alaska down to Key West. FedEx and UPS don't go to all those places. The post office does. That's why we need to keep it, because there's some people that we just forget about, and that's rural America. And what's rural America doing because we're forgetting about them? Voting for Trump. Within 6 months of his first term, two things are going to stop immediately. Disability payments, SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, done. And it'll never come back. But he's not telling you this because he doesn't want you to know. That's why you're not hearing anything about a second term agenda, because it's beyond dark. It is the end of the republic. It is. America's going to have to find a way at some point in the future to rebuild itself, and I don't know how we do that without war. So anybody that you know that's on disability, including yourself or your children, those payments are going to permanently stop. And then there is a plan to eliminate Social Security. Now, what you would think is that these things have to go through Congress, but Congress has not been able to do a whole heck of a lot. But disability, that they're not even keeping that under wraps. It's done within 6 months. How they can do it, I've got no idea. But what's sad is there are people who are living off of disability. They're going to vote for the man that's going to take away their disability. And there's going to be no second stimulus. And people are getting evicted. Do you know what kind of chaos that's going to throw this country into? It's almost like at this point, the people that are sowing this kind of chaos they're not American. Because there's a handful of things that we respect in this country. But the things that are planned for the next term of this administration could not come from an American. And I'll let you put two and two together on that. Gregory Boswell, good morning to you. Antonio Glenn, good morning. Terry Reed Cook, hi to you as well, Terry Reed Cook. Michael May, Trump's America, he thrives on division, quotes in the military. Has he ever showed up to share words of unity, words of healing, words for change? Has he ever offered to sit down with these families, victims, leaders? This is Trump's America, vote for change. Biden-Harris 2020. You know, guys, I don't even know what Joe Biden can even say at this point. What do you say? You can't say anything. Once again, Wisconsin is the poster child for everything that's wrong. They blamed us, they blamed Michigan, they blamed Pennsylvania for his ultimate win in 2016. And now look at this. Look what's happening right now. It's not just the people in Kenosha. It's not just Jacob Blake. It's everybody who has an issue that has a grievance on the left, on the right. People who lost their jobs, people who are about to get evicted, people who don't know if their kids are going to go back to school. It's anybody and everybody descending on this town. You've got the county board, which I've never seen happen before. The county board is in Kenosha, the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors is requesting 1,500 additional National Guard troops with police powers. And I saw what they did last night, and I'm not a military strategist, and I don't know what the ultimate plan is, but when I saw law enforcement and the LRAD protecting the courthouse, and they had a fence line, and then they had shoulder-to-shoulder sheriffs with their riot gear on behind the fence line, so they were very well protected, and so was the courthouse. But then when they made the decision to enforce the curfew 2 hours after the damn curfew expired, and the troops sheriffs moved beyond the fence line and pushed people out of the park, they could have just sat there all night, because then the people are all contained. Because they were having a face-off with the police officers, right? But the police officers were behind the shield, they were behind the fence, and then they had the military vehicles flanking the fence line. They could have just sat there all night. I mean, it's a boring job, but you know, sometimes police service isn't always exciting. But when they decided to breach that crowd and just clear the park, now they did give a bunch of warnings, but they could have just left it how it was, but they didn't. They pushed people into the streets. And you had the guy on the LRAD, the long-range acoustic device. And sometimes it makes a bunch of noise, like a really ear-piercing noise. Sometimes it's a police siren to try and agitate people, to try and get them to go home. Because like, oh my God, the LRAD, it's very, very loud. I don't want to hear that. All that does is raises people's anxiety and makes them more angry. But I saw law enforcement push people into Kenosha. So some of those business owners, I believe, should have a legitimate grievance with how law enforcement took people that were in the park. Yes, I know the park was closed, but you got to understand that the government can't tell somebody when they can and cannot protest. You can't do it. We let them do it. But you can't put hours of operation on someone's constitutional right to free speech. Because if you do that, then I can say, well, maybe women have rights, but only like Monday through Thursday before noon. You can't put limits on those kinds of things. Well, blacks can vote, but only in April elections. We're not totally taking your vote away. We're just saying, here is when we're going to allow you to vote. But it's illegal if you vote in November. We're not totally taking away your right to vote. You still have suffrage. We're just going to limit the dates in which you have it. Can't do that. Curfew's the same thing. I'm sure some of our legal professionals may argue with me. There's a bunch of lawyers in the group, by the way. Karen Ann, I've stopped watching the local news for information on what's happening. Yeah, go to Twitter. Twitter is a little too much because it's too in your face. I mean, some of it is just, droning footage and goes on and on and on. But then when you least expect it, and there's sounds like gunshots going on all of the time, and a lot of those are just fireworks. But you never really know when the ultimate ultra violence is going to break out. Sahara Ali, good morning. Strap up, people. I'm scared when you say that, Sahara, because you're the group's revolutionary. For those of you that don't know, Sahara Ali is like a battalion chief of the revolution here, so you be careful out there in them streets. Rip Anthony Huber, Bobby Dois. I don't want to mess your name up, Bobby. Is that one of the individuals that lost their life last night? Anthony Dodge, 17-year-old man. If he was black, you would already know the storyline. Oh, hell, if he was black and 10 years old, you know the storyline. Charge him as an adult. Justin Thomas Brown took some time to choose the Pettus Bridge as a marching location because Police Chief Baker would go straight to violence. Well, that's from 22 minutes ago. I'm sorry I'm behind on the comments, guys. I'm a mite long-winded today. Carmen Patterson posted a link of sundown towns, which, I thought, well, really any town where there are bigots that are inhabitants that don't want black people walking through their towns and protesting for justice can be a sundown town. So they used to have an official designation. They have signs posted. This is a sundown town. If you're black, you better be in the house by 10 o'clock because you will not get law enforcement protection. But those same people wouldn't get law enforcement protection during the day. But they made it very, very clear. If you're out at night, you're everyone's property, essentially. What about going down there to volunteer to clean up? Stay away from Kenosha. Don't go. There are enough people in that county that can help clean up the damage. Don't go, because it's a matter of time before you start talking with people and getting involved, and they may need you for a peaceful protest that evening. You'll say, well, I'm here participating and helping the good people of Kenosha. I might as well just stay and hang around, because some of the people may not want you to go. They may want to use some of this outside labor. But then there's going to be some people that are going to want you to stay. They're calling in 1,500 more National Guard troops. Let them clean up the damage. Don't go down there. You've heard it from me. You guys are going to do whatever you want to do, but I'm telling you, don't go. We don't have enough to do here in Milwaukee. Can't you register some voters? So those of you that want to go to Kenosha and do stuff, like, you know, Milwaukee still exists, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff here that we can do here. Don't go down there. Justin Ferminich wants assimilation. A woman changing her name from Nimrata Randhawa to Nikki Haley, claiming that there's no racism in the USA. Man, look, that was her name, Justin? Justin Ferminich, those of you that don't know, he helps me moderate the group. God bless you, Justin, because you know it's a full-time job. Justin, you're a little bit more accommodating with people's posts than I am. I have to make sure that the people that are participating in the group have the same intellectual equipment. We all have to be on the same page. Otherwise, everybody's going to argue, and I don't want to. I'll shut the arguments down. We got to do that. So, yeah, a Trump person sent me an inbox of defending the 17-year-old child, and I get a lot of those, but I have a feeling they're probably going to increase in frequency because people don't like what I say, but I'm used to it. Sahara Ali, I was talking to my friend last night about this. How the F are their brown Trump supporters? They think they will get some privilege if they hate their own people. What kind of self-hatred mind fuckery? You know, white people and white privilege, one metaphor, analogy, it's like the sun, okay? It can keep you warm. If you've got white people and white friends that don't see you as black and don't see you as brown, like they make an exception for you, like, oh, you're not black. You're not really black. You're okay. You can hang out with us. And those people can make you feel very welcome. They can. And if somebody else messes with you, you have your white friends that'll protect you. But if you get too close, just like with the sun, they will burn you. Because there is opportunity that white people can bestow on black and brown people that we cannot bestow on one another. We can. We keep saying, oh, if we just work together and come together, we don't possess the financial wherewithal nor the political or policy prowess to be able to bestow opportunities of wealth on one another. It's got to come from somebody white at some level. Like, how many of you go to work? Well, if you do go to work, like, how many of you even work for a black person? How many of you, when you look at your paycheck, if you get a paycheck, because sometimes you get a check stub and there might be a paper check that some people may get for their salary, who signs it? If it's not signed by a black person, then you're having, to some extent, your income is coming from somebody white. And that's par for the course in America. That's pretty normal. It's normal. Or if there's a very liberal and progressive agenda that seeks to discredit and discount the very specific issues that black people, black Americans descended from slaves in this country deal with, and the progressives say, well, no, join us in our fight for climate change. Join us, in our fight for clean air and for clean drinking water, which undoubtedly those are issues for black people, but being black is an issue that starts when we wake up in the morning, when we leave the house. The progressives sometimes don't want to address that. And so what they want to do is take other issues and other problems that they may share with black communities and with minority communities and make that a part of a much larger progressive agenda, but leaving out the fact that you're black and not including that in their policy agenda. Because white liberals, and of course I need to love white liberals because we need as many of them as possible to vote for Joe Biden, even though a bunch of them won't, they can't get their agendas passed to make them even more comfortable and more secure in their neighborhoods and their communities and their wealthy mansions overlooking the lake. They can't get their agenda passed unless they get the lion's share of black voters to vote for their kind of Democrats. So what they do is they find young, impressionable, vulnerable, very intelligent African Americans who can't make it on their own, who need help from the white power structure, especially when it comes to running for office. You need campaign contributions from white donors. Because black people have an interesting set of circumstances when it comes to our income. And if we do have disposable income, it rarely goes to invest in our political structure. Black people rarely invest. Now, some of us do, but a lot of us don't give money to political campaigns. That's white money. And so what these white liberals and progressives can do and will do and have done, and they got a track record of accomplishment in doing this, is they'll say to a decent honest, hardworking African American who they believe have a political future. And they'll say, hey, so-and-so, here's our agenda. It's very liberal. It's very progressive. It's equality for everybody. It's gay rights. It's trans rights. It's the environment. It's climate change. Yeah, it's not really a lot of African American stuff, but it's all those other things. It's $15 an hour minimum wage. You know, you blacks like those kinds of things too. If you just join us and you help us, we'll help get you elected. So, but your agenda has to be what our agenda is. Don't go too far off into that black stuff, because we're going to be helping black people too, and so we're going to help you. We're going to support you. You're going to run for office, and we're going to get you to win, because we can put together a campaign apparatus as a white power structure that black people cannot do, and we're going to fund you, and we're going to get you elected. And then you're going to ascend the ranks, because if we have someone black as the face of the progressives, then that ultimately will get more black people to vote for those progressive causes because they think they're voting for a black agenda. Enter Mandela Barnes. Karen Ann, Trump will take this country down with him. He doesn't care about any of it. Correct. Margaret Chavez Salud says, thank you. Crystal Eve Farinelli. In North Dakota years ago, they said unless you have a mailing address, you can't vote. So the people with P.O. boxes, which are mostly natives on reservations, couldn't vote. I'll look for the article. You ain't got to look for it. I believe it. I believe it. Craig Peterson from yesterday, and this is disgusting. He owned Wisconsin Militia Recruiting. They have a website. Don't share that website, guys, because some of y'all might want to join the militia. Sahara Ali, sure, when he was ouch, you're so right. So y'all want to go half on some beachfront property in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, España. I'm out of here. A little running emoji if he gets reelected. We've all said that. I said if George Bush was getting reelected in 2004, I was going to Canada. I ain't going nowhere near Canada. In fact, when George Bush got reelected in 2004, the furthest north I even went was Green Bay for a Packer game. We all say we're going, so we ain't going nowhere. If he gets reelected, people, I'm gonna move. Really? You're just gonna? First of all, other countries don't want us because we're the coronavirus country. Remember when it was the China virus? Remember? It's not. It's the Trump virus. It's the America virus now. It's our biggest export. Rona. El Cocross says voter registration, and you guys are replying amongst yourselves. Regi Snow, good morning to you. Guys, I think that's about it. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to not go to Kenosha. And we're just going to watch. And we're going to pay attention. And a lot of the energy and the effort that you have where you want to help and you want to get involved, if you're from Milwaukee, I would say that energy and that effort is probably needed here more than there. You guys stay safe. Please be careful. Don't go to Kenosha. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.